What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about a couple of roster moves that the New York Giants made earlier today as they continue to fill out the New York Giants roster. They added a member of the offense and a member of the defense. Not much to spend, right? A limited budget. So Joe Schoen's doing what he can to bring in some players that he feels best could fill out the rest of this football team. And he brought in a former Buffalo Bill. In addition to that, we brought in a member of the defense that is very familiar with Don Wink Martindale's scheme there in Baltimore. So we'll touch on both of those players in this video. Also, Lorenzo Carter officially will no longer be a New York Giant, which is why we probably went out there and signed Ward earlier today to kind of try to at least fill that void a bit. Carter, of course, a former third-round pick out of Georgia, never really lived up to the expectations that a lot of New York Giants fans had for him. Had a couple of 4.5, 5-sack seasons, but he was very inconsistent throughout his career with the New York Giants, and of course, suffered a ton of injuries. He had the torn Achilles his third year in the NFL, and last year never really got it going until the last 4 or 5 games of the season. We'll have to wait and see how Carter does throughout the rest of his career. Will not be with the New York Giants, however, as he signs a 1-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. Wish him nothing but the best. Also in this video, I kind of wanted to touch on all the quarterback shakeup from around the league and what that could potentially mean for the trade market for the New York Giants and teams that could potentially be looking to trade up for a quarterback. But to me, what it really has shown me these last 2 or 3 weeks is teams don't seem to be dying to go out there and draft a quarterback this year. But I'll dive further into my full opinion on that as the video goes along. First, we're going to talk about some of the acquisitions that the New York Giants made. Now, in order to make some of these acquisitions, Joe Schoen actually had to do something that he said he did not want to do earlier this offseason. He did backload a bit of money. Not that it's a whole lot, but we'll get into the specifics. This coming out from Jordan Renan. The Giants converted $2.63 million of kicker Graham Gano's salary into a bonus, creating $1.753 million in cap space. A void year was also added to his contract. GM Joe Schoen has said he preferred not to do this in an ideal world, but it apparently was necessary with the Giants tight versus the cap. And of course, we've been unable so far to trade James Bradberry. Still have Saquon Barkley on the roster. Some have talked about that he's a potential trade target to free up some money. So the Giants do backload a little bit of money for Graham Gano. If you're going to do it for a player, I think Gano is probably the best choice. Doesn't make a ton of money being that he's a kicker, and you figure he's probably going to be in the long-term interest of this football team. Good kickers at the end of the day are hard to come by, and he's certainly been one of them. So I don't really see this really impacting us too poorly in the future. It gives the Giants a couple $1 million, though, to be able to go out there today and make some of these moves. The first big move we're going to talk about is the new running back for the New York Giants, Matt Breida. Breida was an undrafted free agent back in 2017, I think it was, with the San Francisco 49ers. He's been a relatively pretty good back in the NFL. He did have 1 year where he caught for over 800 yards. Doesn't seem to be much of a threat in terms of the pass catching game, but he is blazing fast. He ran a 4.38 40 time at his pro day. He went to, I forgot where he went to school, but he went to a small college, and my friend's a huge 49er fan, so I've watched Matt Breida in the past. Really impressive running back in terms of a change of pace back. Definitely brings a different dynamic to this New York Giants backfield. And of course, has ties to Joe Schoen with the Buffalo Bills. Played there sparingly last year, in which he had a little over 125, 126 yards or so. This coming out from Jeremy Fowler. Veteran running back Matt Breida has signed with the New York Giants per source. New York gets a speedster in the backfield after Breida comes from Buffalo. I think he's going to be 27, maybe 28 this year. I think it's a 1-year deal. These are his statistics. 2017 with the Niners had 465 yards. The following year, he actually had 814 yards, in which he averaged over 5.3 yards a carry. 623 the next year, still averaging over 5 yards a carry. And the last 2 years, he's had 254 yards in a limited role. Last year, had a really limited role with the Bills, only had 26 carries, averaged 4.8 yards per tote. Over the course of his career, he's averaged nearly 5 yards per carry. So I think he's a reliable backup running back, definitely brings a different dynamic to this New York Giants backfield, and expect the New York Giants to go out there and draft a running back. We've heard several reports that the New York Giants have been interested in James Cook. They've been looking at a number of other running backs as well. I expect the Giants to probably target a running back in the 3rd to 4th round area, in which I'll probably have them taking one in one of my 6 or 7 round mock drafts, but I do think we'll be taking another running back, and it looks like they're looking to have a running back by committee approach. I still don't think we're going to trade Saquon Barkley before the beginning of the year. I know some Giants fans may view it after we pick up Breida, after we may potentially draft a running back, is that they may view Barkley as expendable. However, I still don't think Barkley has much of a market. I think the Giants ultimately end up hanging on to Barkley this year, hoping he has a big year, and then trying to make a decision one way or the other. But it does look like the Giants will have a committee approach this year in the backfield with Breida and potentially adding a rookie running back in this year's draft. Obviously replaces Devontae Booker, different type of running back, but the Giants needed to get a backup running back, no doubt about it, and they accomplished that by bringing in Breida. Next small move that we're going to talk about today is Jihad Ward. Ward's been in the league for a bit. I think he's got about 10 career sacks. We'll talk about all the numbers. A former second-round pick, I think in 2016. Some people have said that he may replace Lorenzo Carter's exact role. I don't really see that. He's not really built like him. He's nearly 290 pounds. He's played defensive line throughout the totality of his career, but brings a new edge rusher to this football team, something we certainly need. He's probably a situational pass rusher and a depth piece. Not a guy that you're going to see in the starting lineup, but regardless, Ward does have experience in Wink's system. I think that probably has a lot to do with why the New York Giants brought him on. Here he is signing the paperwork at the New York Giants facility. Here's his exact numbers. Ward, 6'5", 287 pounds, has 10 sacks in 68 career games. He called Martindale a great coach who did a hell of a job with him in Baltimore. He added that Martindale will help him be the best that I could be. So obviously a major reason why he came here was probably because he felt like he could have a pretty big year under Wink Martindale. He's familiar with the scheme, and Wink's obviously very familiar with him. So the Giants bring in two pieces, and I think it's been a pretty successful offseason. We haven't brought in any unbelievable pieces, but we filled some depth pieces. We filled a couple of holes with this football team, and we did what we could with our limited budget and really didn't backload any contracts. So good job by Joe Schoen thus far. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of big moves from within the draft this year. The Giants have 9 picks, 5 picks inside the top 81, which is going to turn me to some of the quarterback turnover in the NFL that's taken place, not just today, but throughout the entire offseason. You've seen a ton of teams go out there and add veterans to their rosters, whether it be Marcus Mariota to the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it be Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders, and there's been several others. Today, there was a shakeup of 3 different quarterbacks. And what this tells me is I feel like there's a lot of teams out there that are not looking to draft a quarterback, at least early in this year's draft. And they're trying to find guys that can man the fort for a year or two until such time they feel like they are ready to draft said quarterback. That's not to say that some of these teams may still not draft a quarterback. I don't think Marcus Mariota is going to prevent Atlanta from taking a quarterback if they really love one. The same can be said for the Pittsburgh Steelers after picking up Mitch Trubisky. So we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out on draft night, but we continue to see a lot of shakeup at the quarterback position. First one we're going to talk about is the biggest news of the day. Former MVP Matt Ryan, of course, a number of years ago with the Atlanta Falcons, has been traded by Atlanta. I think it was a good move for both sides. The Colts didn't give up a whole lot. I think they gave up a 3rd-round pick to acquire him. This coming out from around the NFL. Breaking: Falcons trading quarterback Matt Ryan to the Colts for a 2022 3rd-round pick. However, they had to eat a ton of that money, and a major reason why the Falcons made this move is obviously they're rebuilding. They don't view Matt Ryan as a vital piece to their future anymore. They're trying to clear that cap space, and they're trying to retool their football team. They very well still could be in the market for a quarterback, even though they signed Marcus Mariota to a 2-year deal, which we'll get into the specifics in a second. Actually, I don't think the dollars have come out, but it's a 2-year deal. Again, like I said, I don't think that prevents them from potentially drafting a quarterback. As far as the Colts go, somebody said this to me on Twitter. I thought it made a lot of sense. This is like almost identical to what they did with Phillip Rivers. They brought in a veteran quarterback in the twilight of his career, figured with a pretty developed roster, a strong offensive line, a strong defense, a veteran quarterback like that could potentially make them a threat to go to the Super Bowl. And I think that's what the Colts see here with Matt Ryan, and we'll have to wait and see what they're able to accomplish. They weren't able to accomplish enough last year with Carson Wentz. Maybe Matt Ryan could rejuvenate his career with all the good pieces they got over there in Indianapolis. Next quarterback we're going to talk about, another team that had a void at the quarterback position, decided to bring back Jameis Winston. And Winston last year got hurt, but he actually was performing pretty well with the Saints. Now we have to remember Sean Payton's no longer there. We'll see how they do with the new scheme and everything else. But this coming out from Tom Pelissero, the Saints are re-signing Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal with a base value of $28 million, including $21 million guaranteed. Sources tell me and Ian Rappaport. So after missing out on Deshaun Watson, New Orleans turns to an old friend at quarterback. And I think it's similar to what I just said. I think this is probably a scenario where the Saints are picking at 18. They're not in love with any of the quarterback prospects in this year's draft. And they say, all right, we'll have a stopgap for a year or two with Jameis Winston until such time we feel like we're ready to go out there and draft that quarterback. Of course, if a guy like I'm thinking about Marcus Mariota, who I'm about to talk about. A guy like, say, Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis falls in their lap at 18. Maybe that changes their mind, but I think they're at least open to the possibility of passing on a quarterback in this year's draft. I think that's what this move indicates. Then finally, this coming out from Yahoo Sports, the Falcons have signed Marcus Mariota to a 2-year deal. Mariota, of course, will be replacing the former quarterback, Matt Ryan, who was with the Atlanta Falcons for a number of years. Now Mariota will come in, a former, I think he was the 3rd overall pick with the Tennessee Titans. He is familiar with Arthur Smith. Smith, of course, spent time with the Tennessee Titans. That, I'm sure, has something to do with it. And maybe Marcus Mariota rejuvenates his career, similar to a guy like Ryan Tannehill when he got put in a better situation. I don't necessarily think Atlanta's a great spot for Mariota to get an opportunity to rejuvenate his career. And like I said, I don't think this necessarily takes the Atlanta Falcons out of the quarterback market. But when you look around the league right now in terms of potential trade partners that could look to move up for a quarterback, there's not many out there. Seattle still rings a bell, but there's still other veteran quarterbacks that are potentially out there for these teams to get. Reports have come out that the Seattle Seahawks have said that they may potentially be interested in bringing in a veteran quarterback. Well, Baker Mayfield could potentially make a lot of sense along with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo. So we still got to wait to see over the next 2 or 3 weeks how the quarterback market fills out, but it doesn't seem that there's going to be a lot of teams that are knocking down the door to draft a quarterback early in this year's draft. The Carolina Panthers still is certainly a possibility. After that, I mean, potentially the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, they still have Kirk Cousins under contract. And maybe the Atlanta Falcons would potentially be willing to move up to get a guy, say, like Malik Willis. But in realistic terms, I don't really see it. I think the Giants, in the end, will be at 5-7. And I think they'll be targeting a lineman and a cornerback early in the first round of this year's draft. At least that's the way I feel right now as the quarterback market continues to fill out. As far as the guys the Giants picked up, I think they're good pickups. I think you get yourselves a strong second running back, potentially a third running back, change of pace type back with Breida, and you get yourselves a rotational pass rusher who's familiar with the scheme that Don Martindale wants to run. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.